Hello, everybody. Today we are announcing the September Art Dare, and we are also showing entries from the July Art Dare. If you would like to grow as an artist and you can't take an art class, we've got everything you need here at Art Prof: critiques, tutorials, professional development, and workshops. The July Art Dare was Fantasy Botanicals. And so we asked you to create a 2D or 3D artwork where you invented your own fantasy species. So the first artist we're going to take a look at is Saji. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, but Saji said that it was actually difficult to invent a new plant because plants are just so strange. And so Saji went into the local woods and took photos and then created small elements and sketches. So good for you for giving yourself that in-person experience interacting with these botanicals. And so we actually have several pieces from Saji here. What do you think about the range of plants you're seeing, Jordan?
I think it's really great. The first thought I had, especially when seeing that yellow one with the kind of reddish orange dots, I thought of Dr. Seuss, "Oh, the Places You'll Go." For some reason, it just kind of pops in my mind is this, this fantastical place that is very colorful, it's very vibrant, and it's not something that we see often. And there is a challenge when it comes to creating your own species, or species of plants. So I think that the fact that you struggled through it and got these results is actually really admirable. I think you did a wonderful job.
Welcome everybody to the stream. Michael from South Carolina and George. Tell us in the chat, where are you from? What country, city, whatever you'd like to share. And lurkers, I'm looking at you. And Saji did such a range. I love that this is a whole landscape of botanicals. Here we have another version, something a little bit similar, but we have a figure in there. And I just love the range of styles because this one to me, I mean, this really looks like a very scary bird plant. So
It
there's a
does.
character element to this one that I think is really beautiful. And this one too, like I don't want to mess with these plants.
No, they look like the kind that are sentient and that will come and like bite you in the arm if you walk under them too close.
And also fantastic textures and all of these Saji. I love the hairiness of these. It looks like there's a little bit of silver paint in there. So there's a glow to what's happening in that one. And this one is really fun because there's no outlines. And so Saji's relying entirely on the dots to articulate the forms. So lots of wonderful means of articulation in these pieces, Saji. All right, the next artist we're going to talk about is TJ. And so TJ talks about thinking of sculpting some kind of gourd and explains, I sketched it, followed up with layers of alcohol marker. And yes, they are going to fade in time. That's the case with a lot of markers, but the digital image will be there forever. So here's the early stage of TJ's drawing. You can see laying out the basic shapes and colors. And now here is the final piece. How do you feel about the progress here, Jordan?
I think there's so many improvements that were made. All the colors are much more vibrant. And yet I love how you chose this complementary color scheme with the green and then the reddish orange. And especially that portion, the reddish orange, it really stands out. And the little spider webs on it and everything, I think it's a really good touch. And it feels very tactile. That's why I think I appreciate about it the most.
Tactile and also a little goopy and
Mhm.
listening. And I feel like some parts of this are slimy. And I think what I've noticed about botanicals that I'm fascinated by is just all the different types of surfaces, like what parts of the plant are shiny, what parts are very matte and coarse looking. And so, TJ, I think in this, you've really captured that range because this leaf at the top looks very plump and very bulbous. But then when we get down to the orange part down here, I mean, it really feels like a contained form. And then you have the stuff at the bottom that's sort of dripping downwards. So I love that there are so many portions like that. Now, how about the shape? Because that's not common for a
The
piece to
what?
have the diamond shape that the
Oh,
plant is in.
yeah, no, that was interesting. It feels kind of like some sort of planter to me, where you have the pot that's kind of this triangle shape, and then maybe something on top. That's kind of how I saw it, but it basically is just a really clever way to create a frame for it, I think, and it automatically, I think, creates a deeper contrast because before I mentioned the contrast in the colors with the red and the green, but now we have a contrast with shape where it's the diamond and then the circle inside of it. So it's like no matter which way you look at it, you're automatically going to go to the focal point of this image.
By the way, we have Ellen Doy from Costa Rica, Arle from Indiana, Lisa from Missouri, and Uma from Canada. Thank you all for joining us. This is just my favorite thing when we get to really celebrate everybody in our community through these art dares. Okay, the next artist is William. And William did the Art Dare Leap. The Art Dare Leap is where we challenge you to do more than one piece. So this challenge was to do 4 fantasy botanicals. So we have one called Moon Vines, Potted Businessman Plant, Valley of the Peace Flowers, Lobsters, and Butter. So much going on here. What do you think about this comic cover?
I think this is a lot of fun. It's definitely something that builds drama. I like how you have the title and the plant matching the color and the feeling of it. I also like how it's very clear that he's an astronaut. You can see the Earth in the background and everything. So this is really fun. I think it does tell a story. There's a lot of information told in this image without actually saying anything, and I think that can be very hard to do.
I just love the 10 cents, the title. I mean, as somebody who used to get comics in the mail, remember when we had monthly subscriptions and once a month a comic would show up? I don't know if anybody here remembers that experience, but it really, I think, harkens to that era, which isn't really present anymore. And how hilarious like moment of contact between the
Mhm.
astronaut and the giant eyeball and the plant is just the coolest thing. How about this one?
I love that you have the canvases misaligned intentionally. I think that's a very rare thing to see. Actually, I typically see like a triptych that's just it's laid out exactly, aligned. But this one, you have to think a little bit more. You have to adjust the way you perceive things. And even though it's a subtle change, I think it is something that is very significant and it adds to the complexity of the piece overall.
This one just cracks me up because fantasy botanical, we think, okay, leaves and stems and things from plants. Fantasy botanical is a person. Like I would never ever have thought about that. So I think it's just hilarious that he's just like standing in the pot, and so he's being watered, but he's got an umbrella. Like this is just the funniest thing. Yeah, Uma says great concepts and humor. And we also have Saji here live in the chat. So welcome. It was so fun to remove your work. And we have Swiss Girl from Indiana. All right. So we also have this one here, which is a tank. We have freshly picked Minnesota lobsters. And we also have the butter. So how about this tank?
This is funny. I love how you have the tank juxtaposed with all these flowers around it. It's just because usually tanks are for war, for times of imminent doom, and then you just have these very pretty flowers, and they all have like little peace signs in the middle. And it's like, okay, I mean, I don't know what kind of tank this is, but we could use some more friendly tanks, I guess. you know. So I think that's really funny.
And this is so funny. You've got the price there. You're telling us that they're freshly picked, very specific Minnesota lobsters and the butter. It's just, William, I just love the humor in these pieces. And I just don't think it's easy to make work that is humorous. And I think a lot of people sometimes don't want to do it because they're worried that they're not going to be perceived as serious enough. But also, I want to point out that the style of these images matches the humor, because we've got this super bright yellow in the background, this really playful coral color, and then just the graphic nature of the images is really just fantastic. So great job, William, on the art dare leap. That is just so cool, the way you challenge yourself. And we also have Tori, who says, I was just watching some of your videos about mental health, saw you were live. Thank you for the videos. Really valuable to me right now. Well, I'm so glad you could join us, Tori. Okay, let's take a look at the next artist, who is Sharon. And Sharon talks about how she's a nature focused artist looking for things not normally painted, challenging myself for the most impact. And so this is an artwork. It's a glowing Japanese tree fungus, self lit in the dark. And so we see here, these are Sharon's early tests with watercolors. And we see the in progress here. Here's more progress, and this is the final piece. So what do you think about this? Because I love seeing these progress pictures.
Yeah, I think that the one after this was actually my favorite, seeing everything kind of painted very meticulously, all the little lines and the slight little bits of contrast in the plant, and then everything else just completely white around it. And I really think that that's a really cool image just to see this is what it used to look like before you see the final version. And I always love behind the scenes things. I mean, you guys know me, I have all my art books behind me on the wall. So yeah, I love seeing stuff like that.
I've been watching lots of behind the scenes The Walking Dead.
Of
It's
course you
awesome.
have.
I love seeing all the effects that they create. And I feel the same way about seeing these progress pictures, is really getting to see into the mind of the artist and what their process is. And so, of course, here we have the final piece. And Sharon, that glow is so beautiful. I mean, it's incredibly luminous. And I like how the background is so dull, because that really, really lets that yellow just shine in the piece. And oh my gosh, isn't this line work amazing?
Yeah, that's really that's really great. Like you must have had like the thinnest little brush, or it might even be drawn in there with a pencil. I can't really tell, but it is something that's so meticulous and so specific, and it's something that you just cannot afford to mess up. And I don't think there's any moments where I'm seeing like you trying to fix a mistake, so you just went with it, and I think that's really awesome.
And look at how every single line is a slightly different width. So here the line is super wide. Some of these lines are almost breaking up a little bit, and that really gives the piece a beautiful texture and variety. I think that's very important with nature. Nature is organized sometimes, the bees with their hexagons, but other times it's very uneven and things usually are not exactly the same. So, Sharon, I really appreciate that you were so sensitive to that. And then the texture on the cap is such a great contrast because it doesn't have any lines. It's textured, but in a more chaotic manner. So, marrying those two things is fantastic. Yeah, Arle says, love the subtle texture in the stems and the caps. Thank you all for supporting each other in this way. I think that's one of the funnest things about the art dare, is the way you guys hold each other up. Okay, the next artist is Nancy. And so Nancy did a piece in Procreate and decided to incorporate text. And the piece is about sometimes needing to stand alone and believing in yourself when people you look up to do not. So here's a close up of some of that text that we just talked about. Here's the flower, another close up, and here's the final piece. So what do you think, Jordan?
I really appreciate how personal this feels. I remember seeing this in the Discord and asking what the text read, and it's something that either you would have to take a lot of time to like try and figure out, or it's something that's only really known to the person who made it. And I think that there's a beauty in that, and so it can almost say whatever you want it to say in a sense. But I think that can be very, very powerful and very impactful just by doing that.
And the other thing I love about this piece is that I know there's text there. And there are a couple moments where I can make out a couple of words, but it's not so blatant that it gets in the way of just this beautiful, sumptuous flower. And so it's a really excellent balance, I think, between the presence of a very bold image and then the softness of the background, how light the contrast is. I just think it's so well balanced. And you know something? I don't even need to be able to read the text to feel just the emotional impact of this piece. I think it does both things on that end. Now, Jordan, you're the resident digital painter. What's your take on this?
I love how soft everything feels. I think it can be very easy to go on, uh, something that feels very hard when it comes to digital brushes because you're using a hard round brush. Sometimes things can feel too soft, but I think this actually marries that in between stage quite well. We can feel the different leaves of the petals of the flower going up and then going down the shadow. We feel it curving. We can feel what's further and closer. So I think that that's all balanced very well with this kind of dreamlike quality and aspect of it. So I think that all that combined actually produces for something really, really solid.
Tell us in the chat if you do digital art or if you're scared of it like me. We have the next artist who is Edgar and worked from a photo by Paige Deasley as the inspiration and was originally just going to do a photo study, but then decided to modify the artwork when realized I can adapt the composition to the art dare. So again, we're seeing work in progress, also digital media. And so here we're seeing the initial sketches, Edgar really blocking out some of the color, starting to bring some articulation, especially if you look at the background, some really bold, strong shapes, and some line work. Again, now we see the whole sequence, and here's the finished piece. What do you think?
I think this is really cool. It actually feels like the cover of a book to me or a movie. This feels like a moment of transformation for the character, like a really big moment where they're like, because I want to know like why her hands are glowing. I want to know what those flowers are. Is it producing some sort of healing? Is it like some sort of superpower that she now has, which would be really cool. Or like it makes me want to be involved in the story of who this character is.
Also, the lighting is just stunning. And the lighting happens in many different areas. For example, the glow of the flowers, you see it in the hands. And I love this almost electric blue that's happening. And it gives the scene a otherworldly feeling to it. But also, Edgar was so good about adding the highlights on the clothing, even a little touch on the face. And oh my gosh, I'm so in love with this background because there's a whole feeling, there's a whole other world back there that we can't see entirely. But I think that background really makes the piece.
Yeah, the background is something that I was also looking at, and I think it's great, especially because it has so much contrast that from the light behind it and the darker trees in the foreground, and then how it frames the actual person. And so it's just kind of going, it makes you go from back to front and back to get again, and circling the composition very thoroughly.
And marrying so many different styles because back here we have these almost cut out shapes that have some texture, this brushy stuff back here, and this line work is so lively. I mean, these leaves, they look super gestural, but then there's more geometric shapes. And up here, I love the simplicity of the face, Edgar, that
Mhm.
you didn't go into tons of detail because that's really all we need. But also, I love the hoodie. It's so specific. Like it really says something about the character.
Yeah, no, I think the simplicity which you drew the figure is really great, and you could have, you know, you could have belaboured all these details with how many hair strands, or how the pocket looks, or the wrinkles and things like that, and you just gave us the bare minimum of what we need, which is not a bad thing at all when I say that. So I think it's really good that you were able to distill exactly what it is you needed for the piece and made it work to your advantage.
Swiss Girl says, I feel it could be the cover of a book. Well, I think it's that the narrative is so present that you really feel like something is happening. You're witnessing part of a scene, a story, which is great. Okay. The next artist is Asil. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. And we're looking at a piece which is meant to convey the surrender in terms of a white flag to a big life change that is needing to use aphos. I don't know if that's a typo, if I'm just reading that wrong, the strut looking part to walk. Maybe that's a plant. Who knows? If you know what that is, let us know in the chat. All right, so we have the white flag and this beautiful, sumptuous green. What do you think?
I really like it. It definitely really conveys the fantasy aspect of the art there, and I think the sky actually reminds me of the aurora borealis a little bit with the colors that were chosen, and so that automatically, I know it's a real occurrence that happens in life, but it feels very otherworldly. It's not something we see often, and so seeing that depicted in a painting, and then there's all these other little aspects that I'm like, I'm not really sure what this is. It adds to the mystery of it all.
Also, I love how that sky, it's so fluid and soft, but then this texture at the bottom is just fantastic. I don't know, so what you use to do that texture, but I can see how built up it is compared to the other parts of the piece. And I think it just looks so gigantic and massive. And I know we oftentimes think about plants with leaves and flowing structures, but oh man, there's some plants out there that are big and heavy looking. And I feel like this is a really good contrast against the flags, which are very thin and you almost feel like they're blowing in the air. So a lovely contrast. Now, how about this little creature?
I have to try to figure out exactly what he kind of reminds me of like a seahorse, but
Yeah.
also it looks like maybe he's flying, and so there's a couple things that he's doing, but I think it's a fun little creature to add to the composition, and it adds again to the fantasy aspect because if it were very easy to figure out exactly what he was, or if he wasn't some sort of amalgamation of different species or creatures, then it'd be easy to say, oh, that's a horse and he's on a prairie or something. But in this case, I'm like, I'm not sure. And this background, huh, that's interesting. Oh, these rocks look different. So it's all this buildup, and I really think it adds.
And that creature gives a sense of scale. I think because it's so small, it makes everything else look gigantic. So nice work on that composition. Okay, next artist is Arle Stock Slogger. I hope I'm saying your name correct. Sorry if I'm not, who is actually here live with us in the chat. So we're so happy to have you here. And so this is digital. And Arle says, created a set of, quote, mushroom hands. They correspond with each month's birthstone and birth month flowers. And this is actually a set of vinyl stickers. It's inspired by a vintage Fleetwood Mac poster and trying to create this idea of hands bursting out of the top. So let's take a look at these. We have several versions. So here's the whole set. And now we can see some details of these.
Wow. There's so much put into this. I love the little cross hatching that you see in the fingers. I also love how the petals are being separated through layers with the really deep ambient occlusion and the shadows there. And also just the mushroom head itself looking like it's some sort of puffy sleeve on the arm to me. I think that's really fun.
It's so brilliant the way the hands are emerging, like these little lines that are to the left and the right of the arm. I mean, it looks so soft, like I can really feel the curvature of those mushrooms. And the fact that you did them as a series, the way they're lined up in terms of the stones and the flowers. I mean, there's just so many things that you're integrating here. So Arle says it's a little like the end of row, row, row your boat, but without the M, like airily. Okay, thank you. Airily. Okay, thank you for the correct pronunciation. And it's really fun because you can see that Airlay is creating something which has a similar pattern. Okay, so they all have a mushroom, they all have a hand, and the botanicals, but it's so great how, even though they follow that structure, each one is very much distinctive and its own image. And that's hard to do because sometimes if you do a similar thing, they end up looking too much the same. But if they're too different, they don't really match. And this is clearly a series that's meant to stand alone. And so really nice work making that happen. They look beautiful as a set. And so here are the images assorted by month. And this is just so cute. I love it so much. We've got some prizes to give out. Honorable mention goes to Edgar. Congratulations. We're so proud of you guys for the work that you do during the month. And the prize goes to Airily. Congratulations to all of you for participating. We are so happy to have you all here. Before we announce the September Art Dare, I want to let you know that we have a couple of new workshops for this fall. Social media for artists, artist websites, and selling your art. These are all topics that I think a lot of artists need today, but are oftentimes getting the wrong information about. So these are 2-week-long workshops. You get 2 weeks of written feedback in our Discord, and there's also a 3-hour live session. And we also have space in fall landscapes, mixed media workshop, and the mini sculpture workshop. These are all opportunities to work with me with a small group. We keep the workshops to 12 people maximum. And so you really get to spend a lot of time with me in the trenches working on your stuff. All right, the September Art Dare is Post-it Notes. We're going to challenge all of you to create an artwork that uses a Post-it note in some form. Jordan, do you use Post-it notes?
They're all up on my wall. I usually don't draw on them much though. It's usually for just little notes and things like that.
Do you see? My whole life is Post-it notes. I would just die.
I have these ones with the lines right here. They're a little longer. That's why I like.
Awesome. Yeah, tell us in the chat. Do you use Post-it notes? Because oh my gosh, I have one every day for the things I must do for the day, and I just could not live without them. So tell us in the chat. And they're really fun because they do come in so many different colors, shapes, and sizes. And they've been used in a lot of contemporary art pieces. I know people think about them as office, and I mean, that's pretty much what I'm doing. I mean, you want to see one of my recent Post-its? Is this one? It's about polls that I want to do on the YouTube community tab. And I also have one that's about lectures that I want to do outside of art education. So yes, this is my life, these little Post-it notes. So I love to hear from you guys. What is your Post-it note relationship? And we have Airily color-coded Post-it notes. Yes. And Saji loves them. Swiss Girl says, I have the Post-it note equivalent on my phone. I don't know. I like the paper part of it. So this is a contemporary art installation. It's from 2016 and it's called Subway Therapy. And this is basically a community art project where the artist, Matthew Levy Chavez, invited people at the Union Square subway station in New York City to add Post-it notes. And isn't this extraordinary, seeing just the sheer quantity and all the things that people wrote? I just love seeing it on such a grand scale. George says, back when I was working, the office jokester covered every surface in a coworker's office with Post-it notes. Must have taken him hours to do it. Wow, that's real dedication. Ellen Joy says, I use them for work mostly, notes and reminders of tasks, and sometimes to edit wonky doodles on my sketchbook. Love it. Everybody has such a different thing. And Jordan, have you used these, the cute little shaped ones?
I think maybe if they were given to me, I would have used them, but I don't go out of my way to buy
I had
them.
one that was a little shape. It was a little pond, and it had a little turtle on it. It was so cute. I got it in Japan. Now, here's an artist whose entire practice is doing pen drawings on Post-it notes. So this is John Ken Mortensen, and he does these just delightful illustrations that have narratives and ghoulish looking creatures. He reminds me a little bit of Edward Gorey, but how funny the way he just totally transforms a Post-it note into something different.
Yeah, that's so wild. Like, there's so many possibilities on the post-it note. I guess that's the whole point of it. It's just seeing what you can do. It actually makes me think a lot of before a lot of digital storyboarding was done, people would often do storyboards on post-it notes. Like that's how they would just do a whole sequence like that.
I think it's the convenience, and it's just really satisfying to stick them.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I actually put them on the side of my computer monitor because I don't know, I like them all lined up like that. So this is really a fun thing. And so you can use the Post-it notes for individual pieces if you want to use them to create almost a mosaic. There's a million different ways you could apply that. So we're very excited to see what you guys do for this art dare. And remember, we do have the Art Dare Leap. You guys saw that William did the Art Dare Leap for last month. So this is if you want to give yourself a little bit of an extra challenge. Some people really like the Art Dare because they're really springboards for people to do something that's longer, a little bit more in depth. But of course, you can just give us one Post-it with a doodle, and that is totally sufficient for this Art Dare. Remember, in our Discord, we have this Art Dare channel, and this is such a great place for people to hang out and share their progress throughout the month. Because, Jordan, I think that's really important that people feel that they're doing something together.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole joy of art school. That's the whole joy of usually people when people are doing art and they work in an office is working around people. And I think it's hard to be creative sometimes when you are just in a silo and just by yourself. So if you're posting on the Art Dares channel, I think you'll find a lot of sources of inspiration and you'll be able to encourage each other and give each other ideas.
It's super fun to watch people's progress because a lot of people will post throughout the entire month. And it's just a great place for inspiration to support each other. And remember, you can submit your official submission through the Discord now. There's a pinned message. If you guys just follow the instructions there, it's very easy to submit. Please note, we are no longer accepting submissions via Instagram because Instagram stinks and they changed their search function with hashtags. And so now we're not able to see submissions promptly. But we do love sharing your work. So if you tag us, don't just use the hashtag. We are happy to post on our Instagram stories. And so we love seeing that throughout the month. Visit artprof.org for the Art Dare page. If you go into the main menu bar, just look under Learn and Create, and you will find the page for this month's Art Dare. We also have a Google form. So for those of you who are not in the Discord, you can use this to officially submit. Please join us in the Discord. Jordan and I are going to be hanging out in the post live streams channel immediately after the stream. We can brainstorm some more Post-it note ideas or chat about Rick Grimes from The Walking Dead because he's all I think about now. It's like you and Spider-Man, Jordan. You must think about Spider-Man several times a day, right?
Yeah, it happens
I
pretty
knew it.
often. I mean,
I
I
knew
got
it.
some reminders right here, so yeah.
Well, I can't believe this, but I have a picture of Rick Grimes on my desktop. It's very, very distracting. I really need to delete it or something like that. So remember, we have workshops you can register for September and October. We've got social media for artists, artist websites, selling your art, and we also have our wonderful Open Studios Club. This is a live voice hangout where we can create art together in real time. It's a great opportunity to connect with other artists and see what people are making. Huge shout out to our incredible, loyal, top Patreon supporters. We are so grateful the way you support us and make things possible. Geez, what's wrong with my slide? That's supposed to say subscribe. So Buddy would like you to subscribe because he's hanging outside my office and he'll cry if you don't join our global community and subscribe. Thank you everybody so much. We'll see you next time. Bye.